The following is a special video presentation of the Hennepin County Library.
Hi, welcome to a discussion with Sandy Puckett. I'm Eileen Cavanaugh from the Hennepin County Library System, and my guest today is Sandy Puckett. Welcome, Sandy.
Thank you.
We're very glad to have you and your beautiful book here with us today. The title of the book is Fragile Beauty, The Victorian Art of Pressed Flowers. And your work, Sandy, has appeared in magazines and greeting cards, but This is your first book.
This is the first book published by a publisher. I self-published another book.
You have other books that you've done yourself,
Right.
but this is the first one that we can all
Full color, illustrated, right.
Tell us how Fragile Beauty came about.
How the actual publication came about.
I know that you've done the magazine articles and the greeting cards, and how did that turn into a book?
A book. Well, I was in several magazines, starting with Victoria in 1989. And after that, many other magazines, Family Circle, and I had, there were probably 2,000 people had written me wanting information on what to do. And so I self-published a little book just as information for other people so that they could make pictures. And my husband put a little post-it on my little book and sent it to an editor, and they called me. And that's how Fragile Beauty came to be. It wasn't a year-long or, lifelong process of wanting to publish a book.
Quite an easy life when you think of some authors who wait years and years.
I feel guilty.
That's good.
I feel real guilty. I feel like a fraud. Yes, I never always wanted to be an author. I never always wanted to be an illustrator. I just wanted to share how simple this was, and so I had something to say and happened to find an outlet.
Well, now you may think it's simple, but there are those of us who don't find pressed flowers simple at all. We don't even find it simple to grow flowers.
I suppose. But
maybe what we should do is start with your slides and start at the very beginning with the flower garden, because this is how everything begins, isn't it?
This is the palette. The garden is the creation of your palette. If you don't have a garden, or at least the flowers, you have no.
So the garden really is the paint pot, so to speak,
right.
for the design.
That's right.
Before we talk any more then, let's have a look at those slides so we can start from the very beginning. So here's where it all began, Sandy.
Right. This is a piece of my pressing garden. These are the fairy roses, which are multifloras. They bloom all summer long. You can pick and press. This is in June. You can pick and press for 20 minutes in this group of roses and never make a dent. You still have wonderful fairy roses. Roses are wonderful for pressing. The fairies don't even have to be cut in half. Some of them have to be cut in half vertically because they're so fat. But these are beautiful with blue forget-me-nots in pictures. And this is my initiation into roses. I always thought roses had to be pampered, and they don't at all. These never have to be sprayed or cut down or anything. They're wonderful. Should we go on to the other slides?
Let's go on.
That was only one piece of the garden. And then this shows in a design one big red rose. The double hearts are really popular for weddings. You can kind of inscribe down at the bottom the date of the wedding and who was getting married. And this has wheat in it. Some of these flowers have significance. The wheat, shows bountifulness or go out and prosper. The roses, of course, represent love. The wisteria is a symbol of youth. The verbena, the red flowers up at the top, represent, I think there used to be verbena wreaths in olden times, and they were wedding wreaths that they wore around their head. It's nice to have flowers with significance in wedding pictures.
It is indeed.
This is a garland shape. it's nice for the bottom or the top of stationery. And here I've also used a rose in the center. Oftentimes the focus of the designs is a rose. I don't know why. But
It must be your favorite.
I don't know. It really is, and the fairy rose is. I think the shape, I love the foliage, the way the foliage comes out from a rose, the green part. It's really delicate, has movement, and yet dramatic. It's strong.
You know, you've called that garland, but I think of garland as the stuff at holiday time that's done with more specific points, but that's still a garland.
I call this a garland. I don't know, maybe it isn't. I call it a garland because it looks like it should go over the top of a door. A long time ago, people used to put garlands over tops of doors as a welcome. Any long shape with a little tendril
Or the
at the
mantle
end.
of the fireplace.
The mantle,
Yes.
yeah. And wisteria, which is the green foliage, has a beautiful, beautiful movement in its foliage. It's one of my very favorite foliage pieces. I'm not sure what else is in it.
That's an important part of the arrangement, isn't it? Is the kind of flow and the way the leaves curl.
Right, the movement.
Yes.
It's more important than the flowers, really, I think. And this has more flowers, really, than foliage. But it's delicate. Right at the top, if it were minus that one piece, I think, of wisteria at the top, it would be more, I don't know what the word, bunchy. It wouldn't flow. And I think the foliage always gives the design movement and lets it flow, and that's what makes it say something. I'm convinced that people press, they oftentimes forget to pick the foliage, and I think the foliage is really important.
Well, Sandy, it looks as if there's a lot to consider when you're planning a design.
There is. The one thing that I like people to know, though, is that even though there's a lot to consider, don't consider it when you begin. I mean, don't think that there are so many technical things to do that you'll never do it right. I think the flowers kind of tell you what to do as you're going, even though there are several points. One of them is shape. You always have a shape with every design. Some have very specific shapes, like a pea. That needs to look like a pea. Other ones have a more flowing movement, I think, and that's movement in a design. Wisteria, any tendril, like grapevine, these are little grapevine tendrils, sweet pea tendrils, give a design movement, and that's what makes it flow.
Now, it looks as if the creative part here, now if I were doing that, I would have put an exactly symmetrical flow on the other side, but you've been creative and you've done something a little different with that side, which I think is where the idea of the more sophisticated design and flow and movement probably comes in. But you're right, I think that the novice could just look at the flowers and kind of move them around.
Let them do the talking. You know, when you open up your phone book and these flowers leap out at you, they'll say something. You don't need, partly the reason I wrote this book is because I didn't want it to be technical. I wanted it to be like from one woman to another. You were following me through the garden, you're sitting over my shoulder looking at a design, and it's not difficult, it's not hard at all. Women have been doing it for years and years. I think a nice thing to do is start with a bookmark, which is like a sketch for the larger designs. And within a bookmark, you can practice, do whatever you want to do. You can throw it away if you're not happy with it, or you can keep it and it'll stay forever.
And you can always hide it in that book.
You can hide it in the book. I tend to throw things away. If I'm not completely pleased with things, I throw them away. It's less stressful in the long run than having that layout and having people say, "Oh, is this what you do?" and saying, "No, well, I do that, but not that one. Don't pick that one. I do things much better than that usually."
Now, what's this is pressed within 2 pieces of paper of some kind, right?
No, it's worked on a piece of either rice paper or even tracing paper.
So it's quite simple.
It's very simple. And a piece of contact paper, once the flowers are put on, a piece of contact paper is put across the top, and that's it. That's what gives it almost the texture, like leather. But it's very simple.
It's lovely, though, too.
But bookmarks are kind of, I think, when we were talking before about what you need to consider, one of the things is movement, one of them is shape, the other is proportion, which is important, and that kind of comes naturally. You wouldn't, for instance, within this little card, put a giant pansy. All the flowers will be in proportion. There's a little teeny tendril of grapevine, there's the little teeny forget-me-nots, and the small elder blossoms, and there's a small rose there. Flowers need to be in proportion. You would notice if something like in this, these are all
Now there you have some bigger
larger
ivy leaves.
larger
and,
ivy. These make nice wedding invitations. Another significance of the ivy is fidelity, and the rose means love. Rosemary for remembrance. These would make nice little wedding, or even place cards on a table. You know, on the wedding table would be
Yes.
very nice with their names.
It's so great to have that significance, because as I read your book, and you talked about rosemary as a symbol of fidelity and often being entwined in wedding, in bridal flowers, I thought today, I don't think anybody ever thinks about what they're putting in a bridal bouquet except whether it matches.
Or whether it'll last through the table.
Yes, yes, and that's sad. I think we're the poorer for not using such symbolism in our flowers.
I think so. I think partly there's a rejuvenation, and there are a lot of people getting into gardening, and gardening for variety, which is what you need to do when you garden with pressed flowers. But the more I find, the more I read about flowers, a lot of flowers are being lost. Like you were talking before about the bleeding heart, and you remember that, and that brings back images of your aunt's garden, your grandmother's garden. There are people now who don't even know what a bleeding heart looks like. And the wedding bouquets are the same thing. You usually have the freesias or the things that last forever. I think we need to remember why we're carrying flowers in the wedding, and not just for show for that day, but for the significance and the history of how flowers and weddings and love is intertwined throughout the ages. I've learned a lot more about the historical significance of flowers working with the pressed flowers. Because when I do wedding invitations, people want flowers that mean something to them. And the more I work with them, I find that all of our flowers, almost every one of them, especially in the old-fashioned gardens, mean something. The rose has been around for 35 million years. They found fossils of it in Colorado 35 million years ago. That's a long time.
Does that say that love has been around that long?
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
That's interesting.
That's a long time.
Well, and I should say that within your book you have wonderful quotes about the flowers, about the historicalness of the flowers, and of course one of the great quotes is from Shakespeare about the pansy in Midsummer Night's Dream, and there's a wonderful
Pansy, that's for thoughts.
pansy with the love potion here. That's very nice. And
The
and
pansy has a
photographs
lot
are-
of history, really. It's the word comes from, I'm not a French woman, pensée, meaning
Pensée
thought.
for thoughts.
Yes, thank
yes,
you.
yes.
My daughter would have probably had a fit when I said that. But anyway, yes, it comes from the word meaning thought.
I'd forgotten that too.
It goes back a long time, and they look like little faces. They remind us of people.
I should go back before I forget and ask you about the phone book and the cement blocks, because before we get too far along on the design element, after the garden comes the phone book and the cement blocks.
Right. Well, in between, after the garden, between the cement blocks, you get this wonderful experience of pressing, which is, it only lasts maybe 20 minutes, and that's when you go out in your garden and you look at everything really with a totally different focus, where wheat looks different to you if you're coming at it from a presser's eye or an artist's eye, and little teeny tendrils wrapped around the lilac bush. Unwrap those and bring those in a basket. The basket's beautiful, and bring it into the house. But then you have to open up this mundane phone book, just a great big yellow page or white page, and start at the back and lay your flowers in.
And you brought your phone book all the way. You brought your Ohio phone book all the way to Minnesota.
Yes.
And I assume, can I, that it's filled with flowers?
This is filled with flowers. Normally, this is probably three phone books worth stuffed into one phone book because I need to do some demonstrations.
Does it matter how much? Is there a limit to how much you can put in one phone
Yes.
book?
As you press, you need to have at least 1/4 inch spacing in between so that
Is that for weight or
the paper
absorption?
absorbs the water, the moisture in the flowers. So you really only get about 13 pages in a metropolitan phone book, 13 pages of pressing flowers. But you can go back the next month once these are dry and fill in between. You know,
But you may not use the same page again.
No, you may not use the same page again. And when you're finished pressing, you put cement blocks on top. I know it's not very pretty at that stage, but you know, I wanted to show what...
You probably didn't bring us a picture of the inside of your house with the cement blocks.
300. I have 300 phone books in my workroom. Most people don't have that many phone books. But then they're what I mean when I say that the flowers will actually help you design. When you open up pages, I don't put all of one flower on a page. So you don't put all of the rose leaves on one page.
So it looks almost as if I can visualize a design.
When you open up the phone book. You could, sometimes I put all Queen Anne's lace if I want to get something quickly, or a basic, which is Queen Anne's lace or elder blossoms. I put it all in one phone book. But I like to put a mixture so that you get a nice idea of the color combinations that you want to use or you may not choose to use. But with this page, you've got pink fairy roses and blue salvia looking right up at you. There's almost a design right there without even thinking. You never touch you never do what I'm doing. You never touch the flowers without tweezers.
And what would you do instead of touching?
I never touch the flowers without tweezers. You need tweezers. And this seems really simple. I have one pair of tweezers for 9 years, and I so glibly said in all my books, get a pair of tweezers. Well, my tweezers were very old, and I didn't realize how pointed and wonderful they were, and mine broke. I guess the mileage had just run out on my tweezers. I don't know, they broke in half.
Nothing lives forever.
Nothing lives forever. Everything's fragile. It's relative, I guess. And I lost my tweezers. And I think I went to 9 stores looking for the right tweezers. It felt like I was trying to pick up the flowers with my elbow and putting them on the design. So I think you probably need to go to maybe a medical supply house or Brookstone, but someone who has technical pointed tweezers. But you always pick up flowers then with tweezers. Never. You cannot handle flowers with your fingers. They would break.
Well, how do you keep the colors so fresh? They haven't faded very much.
Within the phone book, they won't. They're not exposed to light or any humidity or anything like that. After the flowers have been pressed for 6 weeks, you can remove the weight, put them on something else, and then just store your flowers like this. That's why it's nice to use these rather than presses, because you have a retrieval system. You can mark what you have on here, and it's a filing system. It's right there. It helps to identify with the month rather than the flowers inside sometimes. If you know what flowers are growing that month. If you know in June that you have fairy roses. You know,
and of course by now you do.
I do. I know the month and I know what's in there. I know that July would be Queen Anne's lace in August. But
so not only is this a hobby, but it would help you to organize your whole life.
Yes, or if you have an unorganized life like I do, it keeps it disorganized but fun. You know, I'm sure an organized person would probably have all the same flowers in the same phone book. And they would be able to go immediately to a phone book and pull out the Queen Anne's lace and use it. However, I find that pretty boring. I like to be surprised. Just like when you go out in the garden and you're surprised by what's growing, or the forget-me-nots reseeding underneath the roses. It's the same with the phone book. And most of the people that have started this, that press their first book, when they open up, they always go, oh, look at this. I can't believe it's real. Or, you know, the little bookmarks. They always say, oh, that's real?
And aren't you kind of capitalizing on 2 thought processes, the thought of the design that you might have had when you went out into the garden, and then looking at it fresh again 6 months later, thinking about what you
saw in the garden, or what you saw in the garden when you're In the winter, working with these flowers, you remember those days of the bleeding hearts in April or May, and you're up there in January working in the freezing cold.
Well, you know, as I was reading this book, Sandy, I thought for Minnesotans, this seems to me practically like canning or freezing foods. It's sort of taking that wonderful summer stuff and preserving it.
It's the essence of the garden.
Yes.
And it's nice, even if you don't make designs. I was thinking on the way here, even if you don't make designs, if you just took a piece of stationery and sent it, I love letter writing. I think that too is a little bit of a lost art. If you took a piece of stationery and just included 3 or 4 pansies inside the stationery, and even put at the bottom of your stationery pansies for your thoughts. But the person receiving it would be given a boost in January. I mean, where else do you see a pansy in January? You can't find them anywhere.
And it would be so much more than just a letter
I
if you were
know.
to get that in the mail.
It's nice.
Wonderful. Can you show us, Sandy, just a little bit about where you would go now from the phone book and how you would start designing a piece?
Well, let's see. Should I start?
Maybe we could take a simple piece like a bookmark.
Okay. The bookmarks are, we will pretend that I've pulled all these flowers out of the phone book and put them on the paper. I find that, I call it pulling the flowers out of the phone books takes longer than making an actual design. That's when you kind of sit there with all the phone books, go through and pick your palette. It's like mixing your colors of your painter. And that actually takes longer than making a real design. It always has. So we'll start.
And now you've started with your tracing paper.
Right. I've been using tracing paper as opposed, you also can use rice paper, which is a little rougher texture. The tracing paper, you can move the flowers around a little bit better, it's smoother. And just draw a line around an ordinary bookmark, a store-bought bookmark, to get the shape on the tracing paper. Pull your flowers that you think will make an interesting palette, but not too interesting. I find that people who begin working with pressed flowers want to put everything in the garden on one bookmark. And I think
because they may think they're never going to do this.
And they're
again.
always beautiful. Everything is beautiful, and everything is rushing out saying, pick me, you're gorgeous. But I think the less you use, the better your statement is. You really need to be selective in what you use. You can make another bookmark using blues, but begin with pinks. And you pick up the flower with the tweezers. With a bookmark, usually what I do with the glue is take it out and put it in a little pile.
Little pot.
Just a little, I just put it on the side of, I've done this, so I will continue to do it. And lay out the design first. I'm going to do this very quickly. But lay out your basic, what you want. And this is why it's important when you're picking foliage to always pick 2 pieces that look similar, but you want a shape or a flowing movement.
I can certainly see where this tweezers is a help.
Oh, you absolutely have to have tweezers. A woman called me from, I don't know, New Orleans, and she'd been doing this for years. Get an idea of what it's going to look like.
Yes.
But then take it back off again and glue. And just take a teensy bit of glue, just enough to hold it down so it doesn't move.
So really you're not primarily gluing this, you're just holding it stable.
You don't need to glue the bookmarks because
It's going to have something on
it will
top.
have the contact paper. If you're doing stationery, you need to glue a little bit better. But you still don't need to absolutely hold everything down. It'll stay.
And that must be the fairy rose, is it?
That's the fairy rose that we saw earlier.
I can see why that's your favorite.
They're beautiful. They don't need the other roses, except for miniature roses, which were my Aunt Nan's favorite. You know, I dedicated the book to my Aunt most of the roses need to be sliced vertically because they're too fat to press. The flowers that you will be pressing are thin.
Sandy, is that why my roses from special occasions ended up in powder in my scrapbook?
Partly. And the other reason was because there wasn't enough weight. You know, we used to just put it in a book. And
right, and we just put it out in the garage.
And that was it.
And that was it.
Yeah, no, they need to have weight, but also they need to not be fat. If they're fat, they'll mold before they will. This is essentially it.
It's already beautiful. It's amazing.
It doesn't take much.
And what we've been at it maybe a minute or so.
Queen Anne's lace is, I call, the great cover-up. It's in a fresh bouquet, you use baby's breath, whereas in a pressed flower bouquet or a pressed flower design, you use either Queen Anne's lace or elder blossom, which is a cover-up. It covers up anything you don't want seen, or even softens.
So that when a few of those little leaves are missing, you can just fill in with the Queen Anne's.
Right.
Oh, that's a wonderful idea.
Just move. This is essentially...
I wish other things operated that way.
Yes. The great, wouldn't it be nice?
The great concealer.
Well, that's what we use Queen Anne's lace for. And forget-me-nots are very difficult to press, but there's nothing like them in a design. I don't think there's any color. That's it. And then you take a piece of... The hardest part about making a bookmark is getting the contact paper off from the...
from the backing.
Yes.
Yes.
I can't do that.
Yes.
But that's... Would you like me to continue with this?
Can we just see it in just a minute or so that we have left, so we can see what a nice product you got from just a few minutes?
Well,
will it hold? Can we hold it up? Will
I
it
don't
stay?
think that will stay. I didn't. Well, maybe it will. I didn't glue the forget-me-nots.
Okay.
I just lay them on. A nice touch with bookmarks. They make wonderful gifts, and it's nice if you put to Mother and the date, Mother's Day, 1992.
The date's important.
All you do then is put the contact paper on top, punch a hole with a hole punch, and put the ribbon through.
In.
It might be easier to hold up a bookmark that I've already completed, and you can see.
It's great, and with Mother's Day coming and
up, it makes a
birthdays
nice gift.
and things, I can think of many aunts and mothers who would love to have a gift.
Teachers' gifts, they're nice for teachers. It costs nothing, probably, certainly less than $1. And my daughter has given bookmarks to some of her teachers, and I know one of them came up. It was in the 6th grade, and Ashley's finishing the 8th grade, and she came up to her the other day and said, "Ashley, I think I ruined my bookmark." And then she came back the next day and said, "No, I ironed it. It was okay. I fixed it."
And now
but I'd like more. Yeah.
And now we're going to have to leave our audience to go home and do their bookmarks. Thank you so much, Sandy.
Thank you.
It's been such fun having you.
Thank you.
A presentation of the Hennepin County Library.